This is a very serious topic. The topic being child molester. I want to first state I am not on any lists. I'm not a registered sex offender, a registered predator, or anything of that nature. So are a lot of other men. They're not registered sex offenders, they're not registered predators. But the fact of the matter is, they just didn't get caught. There are a lot of females who are under the age of 18. Some of you may be listening to this right now, and some of you may know some who do have sex with older men. It's been going on since the Bible. And technically, people are probably going to send a lot of hate over this comment. My understanding is, and most scholars believe, that the Virgin Mary was approximately 13 years of age when the Holy Spirit came upon her and Jesus was placed to her womb. And I mean no disrespect and no sacrilege in what I'm saying here. But if that were to occur in Florida today, where I'm at, technically, God would be considered a sex offender. And I realize that back then people didn't live as long and there wasn't the laws in place. I'm just trying to make a point. When God created women and He created them in a way that they became sexually mature at a certain age, politicians legislated that they're not mentally competent to make those decisions till they're 18. They're saying they know better than God, in my opinion. And I know my opinion doesn't matter to a lot of people, but the point is, there are some 30-year-old women who aren't mentally competent to make sexual decisions. And just the same, there are some 13-year-olds who are. And I know that's probably going to sound horrible, but the point is, this mental maturity factor determined by birthday is, in many cases, ludicrous. Yes, in a lot of cases it applies. But it's politicizing sex. Any politician who tries to take a stand against sexual molestation, or what they term pedophilia, which very often is hebephilia, if I'm understanding the term correctly, meaning pedophilia is the little kids that aren't sexually mature. Hebephile is a person who's sexually drawn to a sexual mature female but's not reached the age of consent, which of course that age varies state to state, country to country too. The irony I find, for example, is if, let's say, a 14-year-old girl comes up to a man and has sex with him, she's a child victim, and he's the criminal. That same 14-year-old girl comes up to a man, pulls out a gun, and blows his brains out. She's adjudicated an adult, and he's the victim. There's a dichotomy. There's a dual thing here. Some of you understand, and some of you are hating me for what I say, and that's okay. I understand the differences. And I'm not trying to justify things that are wrong. I'm trying to say that in some cases, it's not a matter of the perversion that everything gets painted with the broad brush of. In many cases, it's a loving, consensual relationship, but it's not in the eyes of the law. There's been oftentimes, you've heard of many cases where a young man who's past the age of 18 is still with his girlfriend that he loves and has been with for years, and he does something to piss off their family, and the next thing you know, they're filing charges against him. Even though they have their Romeo and Juliet laws supposed to be in place, it doesn't matter. I saw a news story about a month or so ago about this 18-year-old female cheerleader, pretty girl, had sexual relations with, in a lesbian context, with a freshman, and she was deemed a sex offender. It's gotten out of hand. It's gotten out of control, and the whole idea of these lists and everything, it's a modern day scarlet letter. Think about this, and I know this is another thing I'm going to probably get a lot of hate about, but if you have a child, which would you rather have happen to them? Would you rather than be sexually molested or murdered. You don't have any list saying where the murderers are living next to you or and down the block from you. Yet this is somebody who's already shown they're capable of taking a life. And even in the hierarchy of prison, the sex offender is at the bottom of the list, while the cop killers are at the top. We have a lot of mental illness in our society that's in the masses, and broad brush that too. Because if you think about it, if I had a child, and this is, you're going to think I'm twisted, I'd rather them be sexually molested. They can recover from that. They can't recover from being murdered. Yet we don't put murderers on the list. Now, am I endorsing lists for murderers? No. I'm saying get rid of these lists. You think it's protecting your child? You think keeping them away from parks and places kids gather? Very few instances of this has to do with somebody walking up with a trench coat and socks and flashing and doing, that's the Hollywood version of it. In reality, most sexual molestation occurs from family members or people who know the family or people who are in the home. It's got nothing to do with parks and schools and all these other things. This is just politics. I cover a lot of that in the I Worked for Trump book. It's insane how, just like with gun laws, people who are lawful gun owners aren't the problem. It's the ones who get hold of the guns and do it illegally. These laws that are put in place for people who have molested their own child or their most times it's somebody who knows the kid, who's taken the time to groom the child and to establish some type of a sexual relationship with the kid in a family environment or friends or a school environment. The whole problem being these laws are acting like everybody's running around, drool dripping out the side of their mouth, chasing kids around. And as the rule, most of the time, that's not the case. I'm not saying those people don't exist. They do, and they deserve to be locked up forever. I've spent time in prison and met a lot of them. Some of those guys need to stay there forever, but some don't belong there. You've torn apart families. You've ruined people's lives. They get out and they can't establish anything because they're all seen as these, trench coat wearing perverts, and sometimes they're just men who fell to a temptation or were victims themselves and carried it on into their adulthood. And yes, some of this is terrible and wrong, but we're addressing these things inappropriately. Very often I see these late night infomercials when I'm around the TV where they show these sad pictures of puppy dogs in poor situations. And some of these dogs are vicious and bite because of the abuse they've received, and we talk about loving them back into being normal good pets again. We need to look at prisoners that way. These are men. Mostly men are in prison. Women get a double standard in a lot of cases when they sexually abuse, under the legal terminology, a boy. They're not sentenced in the same way. They don't get the same kind of time. That oftentimes it's just a complete double standard. And instead of making it worse or harder, it's not fixing the problem. It's just costing society far more money than we have to spend in our budgets anyway. We have to look at the nature of the problem and the issue, and very often these people are people who they themselves have been abused who go on to abuse again. Look at the Catholic Church. I personally have experienced that. All the molestation that occurs there, it's damage that's done to a person, but it's also when it's a child, they're being taught this is what you do. So when they get older, that's what they do. If this makes any sense at all. I have a lot of views and opinions. You may or may not agree with them. I just wanted to share them. I am currently, if you see this here, this is a ankle monitor. I'm on what's called CRD, which is basically a parole. And I'm put under sex offender conditions, but I'm not a sex offender because there were allegations that were all dropped. I'm not going to go into the details. I don't have the time in this video to do that. So I do have knowledge and information, and people may not want to hear what I have to say because they're going to assume the worst, and that's fine. That's your choice. This is still a free country, and there's still freedom of speech, and that's part of why I'm talking. I want to help people who are currently considered victims, people who are currently considered offenders. We need to fix the problems in the system. We need to help the people who can be helped. We need to keep the people who are dangerous locked away. I agree with all that. But we're not running the right filters through the system right now, and some of the people who are bad are getting out, and some people who are good are staying in, and then this constant labeling of people. People don't necessarily always stay the same person. I'm not the same person I was from 20 years ago. Neither are you. You're different, right? Or are you the same person you were 20 years ago? Are you the exact same person, do the exact same thing? You haven't learned anything, you haven't changed, you haven't developed into a new adult or matured in certain areas? Of course you have. Everyone has. People learn and change and can do that all the time, yet when you get stuck with a label for the rest of your life in the system, you're being painted with a brush that's not your true colors. And we need to change that for all of us, because some of these people that get painted wrong are someone's friend, family member, father, brother, and they're not being treated fairly. We're supposed to be a Christian nation, and Christian pillars of support of the Christian religions, one of the main pillars is forgiveness. Forgive yourself if you're someone who's done wrong. And everyone else, learn to forgive those who've made mistakes and love them back like those puppies in those commercials. I have strong views and opinions on this, and I'll express more of them in the future. I'm just going to leave this at this point. Thank you for listening, and I apologize if I've offended you. I didn't intend to. God bless you. Have a good day. Please think about the things I've thought, and post comments below. I'm interested to see what you have to say. Thank you.